Shut up!
I just wanted to say hi to
Shut up. Face the wall. Turn around. Turn around.
And then he just needs a beat down, needs humbling. And instead of eating cheeseburgers, I'm going to feed him some.
Joe Rogan's face says everything you need to know. Pure shock, complete disbelief. One of the most experienced commentators in combat sports, a guy who's seen it all, sitting there absolutely speechless because Anthony Joshua nearly died in a car crash that should have killed him. And now Joshua's filing a lawsuit against Jake Paul that's about to expose the toxic, reckless environment Paul creates everywhere he goes. While Paul's busy manufacturing drama for his YouTube channel and counting his social media money, Joshua's dealing with the real-world consequences of that chaos. We're talking about a legitimate heavyweight champion who survived what doctors are calling a miracle, and he's not letting the people responsible walk away clean.
I mean...
That's bonkers. Thank God he didn't have a seatbelt on. I never say that. Thank God he didn't have a fucking seatbelt on, because if he did...
There's no way.
He would be dead.
But here's what makes this absolutely insane. This isn't some Twitter beef or promotional stunt gone wrong. Joshua's taking formal legal action, which means his legal team believes they have a rock-solid case connecting Paul's reckless behavior to this near-fatal accident. Think about that for a second. A lawsuit this serious doesn't get filed unless lawyers see a clear path to proving negligence. And while Jake Paul's built his entire brand on pushing boundaries and creating chaos for content, Joshua's showing the world what happens when that recklessness crosses the line from entertainment into endangering actual lives. The contrast couldn't be more stark. On one side, you have a professional athlete who's dedicated his life to the sport, respects the craft, and understands consequences. On the other, you have a YouTube star turned boxer who treats everything like content for his next viral moment.
He was just talking about, oh, he's this, he's that, he's that. I said, but why are you worrying about what someone else has done? What have you done as a fighter to kind of boost your ego?
Eddie Hearn just confirmed what everyone suspected but hoped wasn't true. The lawsuit is officially filed. This is no longer speculation or rumors floating around social media. Joshua's legal team has submitted formal paperwork in court, naming Jake Paul as a defendant in a case that could change everything about how influencer boxers operate. And get this, Hearn's not known for making empty threats or filing frivolous lawsuits. When his fighters take legal action, it's because they have evidence, witnesses, and a case strong enough to win. While the Paul brothers have spent years hiding behind their legal teams, deflecting responsibility and spinning controversies into profit, they're about to face something they can't YouTube their way out of. A real courtroom with real consequences where follower counts and social media clout mean absolutely nothing.
As AJ said, and everybody knows, he's not a real boxer. There's levels to this game, and he was way out of his level.
Here's where it gets completely wild. Johnny Nelson, one of the most respected voices in boxing, went on record saying nobody in the professional boxing community takes Jake Paul seriously, and this lawsuit proves exactly why. Paul's approach to the sport has always been about generating clicks, stirring up drama, and creating content that goes viral. But when that approach starts putting lives at risk, when real fighters start getting hurt because of the toxic environment Paul creates, the sport fights back. Joshua survived an accident that killed 2 other people. 2 human beings with families, dreams, and people who loved them are dead. And Joshua, through sheer luck or divine intervention, walked away with minor injuries when he should have been the 3rd fatality. That's not drama for entertainment. That's not content for a YouTube channel. That's a tragedy that demands accountability.
It's about AJ. Nobody expects Jake Paul to win apart from Jake Paul. I bet his own dad doesn't even expect him to win. Nobody believes he's going to win. So if anybody says, yeah, no, Jake Paul's going to do it, they're gamblers. They're hustlers. They're just trying to...
And listen to this part, because it's crucial. Multiple boxing insiders are now confirming that Joshua was in critical condition immediately after the crash. We're talking about a situation where doctors weren't sure he was going to make it through the night. The same Anthony Joshua who's faced down heavyweight killers in the ring, who's shown incredible heart and courage against the best fighters in the world, was lying in a hospital bed fighting for his life because of circumstances allegedly connected to Jake Paul's recklessness. While Paul was probably planning his next social media post or counting revenue from his latest controversy, Joshua was dealing with the possibility that his career, his life, everything he'd worked for might be over. Eddie Hearn confirmed that the first 48 hours were touch and go, and Joshua's survival is nothing short of miraculous. But wait, it gets even more revealing about the character differences we're dealing with. Sonny Edwards, another respected professional boxer, put it perfectly when he talked about the gravity of what Joshua survived. This is a man who faced genuine life-and-death moments, who lost friends in the same accident, who had to process trauma that would break most people. And his response? File a lawsuit to make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. Compare that to Jake Paul's typical response to controversy, which is to make jokes, deflect blame, and find ways to monetize the attention. Joshua's using his platform and his survival to demand accountability. Paul uses every situation, no matter how serious, to build his brand and increase his net worth. The difference in character, in values, in basic human decency couldn't be more obvious.
It was a sad thing to hear, a sad thing to see. God knows how it'll affect those that saw it mentally, emotionally. But you've got to think about these two men were somebody's child, someone's brother, and that's what you've got to think about. Those people that have lost their lives. Now that is the saddest thing you could ever.
Here's the kicker that nobody's talking about. Dorothy Davies highlighted something that should terrify anyone connected to the Paul brothers' operation. This accident wasn't some random occurrence or act of nature. According to sources close to the investigation, the circumstances leading up to the crash can be traced back to the chaotic, reckless environment that surrounds Jake Paul's events and appearances. We're talking about situations where safety protocols are ignored, where proper security measures aren't implemented, where the focus is entirely on creating viral moments instead of protecting people's lives. Joshua's lawsuit isn't just about getting justice for himself. It's about exposing a pattern of negligence that's been building for years, while everyone looked the other way because the Paul brothers were making money and generating headlines.
Responsible action.
Hearing that he, it doesn't look like he has any major injuries is true, and that would be fantastic, and obviously he'd be a very lucky boy if that was the case. But we hope that is the case.
And get this, because Adam Smith's comments reveal something that should make every boxing fan furious. The sport came within inches of losing one of its greatest champions, not in the ring where he chose to face that risk, but because of off-camera chaos created by people who treat boxing like a game. Smith talked about the shock waves that went through the boxing community when news of Joshua's accident first broke. Promoters, fighters, commentators, everyone connected to the sport held their breath waiting to see if Joshua would survive. Meanwhile, Jake Paul's team was probably calculating how they could spin the story to avoid responsibility and protect their brand. That's the difference between people who respect boxing as a sport and people who see it as content creation.
2 weeks ago, this guy's in front of the whole world, Netflix, millions of dollars, breaks Jake Paul's jaw in 2 places, decides to go back to Nigeria, almost dies. 2 of his closest friends pass away in the accident. You never know.
But here's what makes this lawsuit absolutely devastating for Jake Paul's reputation. Turki Alalshik, one of the most powerful figures in boxing right now, made it clear that the potential brain injuries Joshua could have suffered would have been career-ending at minimum. We're talking about a heavyweight champion in his prime, at the peak of his earning potential, facing the possibility of permanent neurological damage because of circumstances allegedly connected to Paul's recklessness. The financial damages alone could be astronomical. Lost future earnings, medical expenses, pain and suffering, the impact on Joshua's family and team. Paul's been bragging about his net worth and his business empire, but if Joshua's legal team proves their case, a significant chunk of that wealth could be heading to the man who nearly died because of Paul's alleged negligence.
It just shouldn't happen, but we don't know. As with all these things, there's always a grey area, isn't there?
Tony Bellu's take on this situation perfectly captures why this lawsuit resonates with so many people. Joshua showed incredible vulnerability and humanity in how he handled the aftermath of the accident. Instead of retreating, instead of staying quiet to avoid controversy, he chose to speak out and take action to prevent others from suffering the same fate. Bellu emphasized that Joshua's first thoughts after surviving weren't about revenge or money. They were about his friends who didn't make it home, about his family who almost lost him, about making sure this kind of tragedy doesn't happen again. That's the mindset of a true champion, someone who understands that with platform comes responsibility. Compare that to Jake Paul's typical response to controversy, which is to deflect, make jokes, and find ways to profit from the chaos.
Life. And it's so crazy to think that over a week and a half ago, he was on top of the world. Apparently, he'd pocketed $92 million from his Jake Paul fight. The American audience was in love with him. His star was bigger than ever. And then just yesterday, we see footage like this of AJ being pulled from the wreckage in a situation where if he'd just sat on the other side of the car, they wouldn't have been pulling him out alive. There's no way.
Now here's what has the entire boxing world buzzing. The speculation about what this lawsuit could reveal during the discovery process is absolutely wild. We're talking about potentially exposing internal communications, safety protocols, financial records, and decision-making processes that Paul's team has kept hidden for years. If Joshua's lawyers can prove that Paul organization knew their events and appearances created dangerous situations, but chose profit over safety, this case becomes about way more than one accident. It becomes about a pattern of negligence that could open the floodgates for other lawsuits, regulatory investigations, and criminal charges. Paul's built his empire on the idea that he's untouchable, that his money and legal team can handle any controversy. But you can't lawyer your way out of someone nearly dying because of your alleged recklessness.
At the highest level.
To really be there for them and the family, anything they need. You know, sometimes when someone is a star, they have a lot of things in their life taken care of for them. So you really have to move into that mode in this situation as well. Make sure, obviously, they're getting the best medical attention, make sure their family are safe and happy and happy.
So there you have it. Anthony Joshua survived a crash that should have killed him, lost friends who meant everything to him, and instead of staying quiet, he's taking on one of the most controversial figures in combat sports through the legal system. This isn't just about money or revenge. This is about accountability, about making sure that people who profit from chaos can't hide behind their wealth and influence when their recklessness puts lives at risk. And honestly, this could be the beginning of the end for Jake Paul's entire approach to boxing and entertainment. The sport has tolerated his antics because he brings attention and money. But when that attention comes at the cost of human lives, the tolerance ends. So here's my question for you. Drop it in the comments. Do you think this lawsuit will finally hold Jake Paul accountable for his reckless behavior, or will his legal team find a way to make this disappear like every other controversy? If this breakdown helped you understand what's really happening behind the scenes, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell because this legal battle is just getting started, and the revelations are going to be absolutely explosive. I'll see you in the next one.
But also friends. My sincere condolences to their families, loved ones, and everyone who knew them. Anthony Joshua, wishing you a speedy recovery. Stay strong.
And you know what's absolutely mind-blowing about this whole situation? Jake Paul's silence speaks volumes. Usually when controversy hits, Paul's all over social media within hours, dropping responses, making jokes, trying to control the narrative. But this time, radio silence. His social media team, his PR machine, his usual army of defenders, they're all conspicuously quiet. That tells you everything you need to know about how serious this legal situation really is. When someone who's built their entire career on never backing down from a fight suddenly goes quiet, it means their lawyers have probably told them to shut up, because anything they say could be used against them in court. This isn't some Twitter beef Paul can win with clever comebacks and viral videos. This is real legal jeopardy where every word matters.
A little bit dazed water, he could get seriously hurt. I don't believe Josh would have. I believe Josh might have some compassion.
But here's where this story takes an even darker turn that nobody's talking about. Sources close to Joshua's camp are revealing details about the psychological trauma he's dealing with that goes way beyond the physical injuries. We're talking about survivor's guilt, PTSD, and the mental anguish of knowing that 2 people died in the same accident he walked away from. Joshua's been open about struggling with depression and mental health challenges throughout his career, and now he's processing trauma that would break most people. Meanwhile, Jake Paul's probably in meetings with his team figuring out how to minimize the damage to his brand and protect his revenue streams. The human cost of Paul's alleged recklessness isn't just measured in physical injuries or financial damages. It's measured in the psychological scars that Joshua will carry for the rest of his life, knowing he survived something his friends didn't. And get this, because the timing of this lawsuit reveals something absolutely crucial about Joshua's character. He could have stayed quiet, taken a settlement behind closed doors, and moved on with his life and career. That's what most people would do, especially someone with Joshua's wealth and status who doesn't need the money or the publicity. But he chose the harder path, the more public path, the path that puts his own reputation and privacy at risk because he believes accountability matters more than convenience. Joshua's legal team confirmed that they turned down multiple settlement offers from Paul's representatives before filing the lawsuit. That means Paul's people knew they had exposure, knew they were potentially liable, and tried to make this go away quietly. But Joshua refused to let them buy their way out of responsibility. Here's what makes this absolutely explosive for Jake Paul's business empire. This lawsuit doesn't just threaten Paul personally, it threatens every aspect of his operation. We're talking about potential liability for his promotion company, his management team, his security contractors, and anyone else who was involved in creating the circumstances that led to the accident. Joshua's lawyers can prove systemic negligence. They can go after corporate assets, business insurance policies, and future earnings from Paul's entire organization. Paul's been bragging about being worth hundreds of millions, but a successful lawsuit of this magnitude could force him to liquidate assets, restructure his businesses, and potentially file for bankruptcy protection. The same empire he spent years building on controversy and chaos could crumble because he finally pushed things too far. But wait, there's another layer to this that's absolutely fascinating from a legal strategy perspective. Joshua's team isn't just going after Jake Paul individually. They're targeting the entire culture of reckless behavior that surrounds influencer boxing events. Legal experts are saying this case could set precedent for how courts handle liability when social media personalities create dangerous situations for content. We're talking about a potential shift in how the law treats influencer responsibility, where having millions of followers and massive platforms comes with legal obligations to prioritize safety over engagement. If Joshua wins this case, it could open the door for lawsuits against other influencers whose reckless behavior has caused harm. Paul might not just be facing justice for his own actions. He might be facing justice for an entire industry built on pushing boundaries without considering consequences. And here's something that should terrify Jake Paul's legal team. The discovery process in this lawsuit could expose communications, planning documents, and internal discussions that Paul's organization has kept private for years. We're talking about potentially seeing emails where safety concerns were raised and ignored, text messages where profit was prioritized over protection, and meeting notes where Paul's team discussed taking risks they knew could hurt people. If Joshua's lawyers can prove that Paul's organization had a pattern of ignoring safety protocols and creating dangerous situations knowingly, this case becomes about way more than negligence. It becomes about willful misconduct, which opens the door for punitive damages that could financially destroy Paul's entire operation. The same secrecy and lack of transparency that Paul used to protect his business could be what ultimately destroys it. Now here's what has everyone in the boxing world absolutely stunned. Multiple sources are confirming that Joshua's accident wasn't the first time Paul's events created dangerous situations. It was just the first time someone nearly died. Former security personnel, event staff, and people close to Paul's operation are coming forward with stories about corners cut, protocols ignored, and safety measures skipped to save money or create better content. We're talking about a pattern of behavior that suggests Paul's team knew their approach was dangerous, but continued anyway because it was profitable. Joshua's lawsuit has given these whistleblowers legal protection to speak out, and their testimonies could be devastating for Paul's defense. When you have former employees testifying that they raised safety concerns and were told to stay quiet or find new jobs, that's not negligence anymore. That's conscious disregard for human life. But here's the part that makes this story absolutely heartbreaking and infuriating at the same time. The two people who died in Joshua's accident weren't celebrities. They weren't public figures. They were regular people who got caught up in the chaos surrounding Paul's toxic environment. They had families who are now dealing with unimaginable grief, while Jake Paul's team works overtime to protect his reputation and minimize his legal exposure. Joshua's lawsuit specifically mentions his commitment to honoring their memory by making sure their deaths weren't in vain. He's not just fighting for himself, he's fighting for people who can't fight for themselves anymore. That level of integrity and moral courage is exactly why Joshua has the respect of the boxing community, while Paul is treated like an outsider who doesn't belong in the sport. And listen to this, because it reveals everything about the character differences we're dealing with. Since the accident, Joshua has been quietly supporting the families of the victims, attending memorial services, and using his resources to help them deal with their loss. He's done this without publicity, without social media posts, without trying to get credit or improve his image. Meanwhile, Jake Paul's team has been working with crisis management specialists to control the narrative and protect his brand value. The contrast couldn't be more stark. One man is using his platform and resources to help people heal and find justice. The other is using his platform and resources to avoid responsibility and maintain his profit margins. That's the difference between someone who understands that fame comes with responsibility and someone who treats fame like a license to do whatever they want without consequences. Here's what makes this lawsuit absolutely brilliant from a strategic standpoint. Joshua's legal team isn't just seeking monetary damages. They're seeking injunctive relief that could fundamentally change how Jake Paul operates his business. We're talking about court orders that would require Paul's organization to implement specific safety protocols, hire independent safety monitors, and submit to regular inspections before hosting events. If the court grants these requests, Paul's entire business model gets turned upside down. The chaos and unpredictability that made his events profitable would be replaced by structure and oversight that prioritizes safety over entertainment value. Paul's built his brand on being unpredictable and pushing boundaries. But if this lawsuit succeeds, he'll be operating under court supervision, where every decision gets scrutinized by people whose job is protecting public safety, not generating viral content. And here's something that should make every boxing fan absolutely furious. The sport came within inches of losing one of its most talented and respected champions, not because he took a calculated risk in the ring, but because someone else's reckless behavior put his life in danger without his knowledge or consent. Joshua dedicated his life to boxing, worked his way up from nothing, represented his country in the Olympics, and became a role model for millions of people around the world. All of that almost ended because Jake Paul's organization allegedly prioritized content creation over basic safety measures. The boxing community is rallying around Joshua, not just because they respect him as a fighter, but because they understand that what happened to him could happen to any of them if influencers like Paul continue operating without proper oversight and accountability. So here's what happens next, and why this case could change everything about how influencer boxing operates. The discovery phase is going to be absolutely brutal for Jake Paul's team. We're talking about months of depositions, document production, and testimony from witnesses who were there when the accident happened. Joshua's lawyers are going to have access to Paul's financial records, communication logs, event planning documents, and insurance policies. If there's evidence of negligence, cover-ups, or patterns of dangerous behavior, it's going to come out in court where Paul can't control the narrative or spin the story to his advantage. This is the kind of legal scrutiny that Paul's managed to avoid for years, but there's no avoiding it now. When someone nearly dies and decides to seek justice through the court system, all the money and influence in the world can't make the truth disappear.